Hi, everyone. Nate here. Just a quick heads up that if you enjoy What a Hell of a Way to Die, you can access bonus content in which we publish a new episode every week on our Patreon. The link is in the show notes, and for $5 a month, you get access to all the bonus content we've put out since we started the show back in 2016. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me and it is Nate. Nate, the times have changed. You guys are going into the great darkness. The fifth season is around the corner for you all.
No, the second season for Britain. There's two seasons. There's dark, wet autumn and dark, wet spring, and we're in dark, wet autumn now.
Yeah.
But yes,
it's cold.
It's
cold and wet.
It's not really cold yet. I mean, it's feeling it, and obviously we live in an old house, so it's just drafty regardless. I mean, we have double paned windows, which is like a luxury in Britain, but they haven't been very well fitted, so like the window frames leak and shit like that. But the big thing is just, yeah, man, you switch back an hour and it's dark before 5 now. And come the end of November, it's going to be, it's going to be awful.
Yeah,
because,
it's dark before 5. It's only October. Like, that is, but you get so much sunlight during the, like, I can't think. Here's what I need. We need the Patreon to really take off so I can just have, like, a summer home in London. Or maybe somewhere. Yikes. Maybe somewhere a little bit cheaper. Maybe Liverpool.
I mean, Liverpool would definitely give you a much nicer summer, let's be perfectly honest, because it's further north and it's brighter. Also, it's like an extremely left-wing city, and it's also very cheap to live in. I was also going to say, in terms of like the most sun per year, the southern coast of England is actually really nice. Like the extremely English Defence League, British National Party, skinhead asshole parts of Kent on the coast, like Ramsgate all the way down towards Sussex, towards Brighton, that area of the country actually gets a lot of sun even compared to London. And it's extremely grim, but it is also on the seaside, so you have the opportunity to spend time there, and you can just work on your accent and learn how to say, "I'm not racist, just don't like them," and you'll be good to go.
Who's the football team down there?
I don't really know. I mean, honestly, if you support any of the London football teams, like especially like. I really have to think about that. I mean, I'm sure there are like teams down there. Brighton's got one, and I know that like Portsmouth and Plymouth, which are further away, they have teams too. But quite frankly, if you just supported, I don't know, Crystal Palace or Arsenal or fucking Millwall, the racism team. Millwall is famously the racism team, so they will. Everyone will respect you.
I'm gonna back the Crystal Palace just because that's also the name of the first strip club I ever went to. So that's my team now.
Oh wow, the Crystal Palace is actually okay. So it's a weird story, but they built this big exhibition hall in the 19th century, and at the time it was sort of like this marvel of architecture. It was all like reinforced steel, I think, and glass panels. So they built this whole great big ass thing. And I want to say it was somewhere in central London. It might have been in, I don't want to guess and sound like an idiot, but I want to say it was somewhere in like Hyde Park or something. And then they moved it to South London, to a suburb, was the suburb of South London. So basically like between Bromley and Croydon, which is now known as Crystal Palace, in the, I think, around the same time. And it kind of like fell into disrepair. It sort of became like a shitty gambling hall and bordello kind of thing. And what wound up happening was, I want to say in the 30s, like before the war, it wound up catching fire and burning to the ground. So, I mean, it's entirely glass and metal, but it was full of shit that wasn't glass and metal. And so, yeah, it burned to the ground. And now you can go down there. I've ridden my bike to Crystal Palace Park. You can go down there and you can see like the platform where it used to stand. And there's this huge park there, and like there's like nature trails and statues of dinosaurs for some reason. But when you see the pad, if you will, like the platform where this architecture, where this building stood, you realize it is fucking massive. It was like, I mean, you look at it, you're like, this must have been at least like 1,000 feet long. Like, for a structure from that era, like, it's huge. And you're like, wow, that would have been really cool if they had preserved this. Oh, well, it burned to the ground. Now we just have this big platform, basically. And, and a park full of painted dinosaurs. I don't get it. I don't understand anything about this place. But yeah, it looked like, if you see old photos of it, you're like, wow, this is genuinely would have been a really, really cool thing to see. Like, your old-timey, like, 19th century exhibition hall, but entirely made out of glass, like the world's biggest unintentional greenhouse. But yeah, now
England seems like it's a place that they really value, like, very specific parts of their history, but then other parts are like, look, we pretty much lost entire metropolitan areas to blitz bombing, so we don't hold on to these things too much. Except for as soon as you're just like, oh, can you give some of the things that you stole that are in the British Museum back? They're like, oh, no. We won't be doing that.
No, we can't do that. Well, what's also funny, too, is so there's a style of housing that was really popular in the Victorian era. I want to say it was called back-to-back housing, or it's a kind of slum housing, basically, that you didn't really have any, you barely had any windows. The houses were all sort of back to one another in a courtyard. And then the courtyard opened up basically in like an L shape or a U shape, where you would have like public toilets for the residents. But these houses were fucking grim. Like, let's be perfectly honest, they were extremely grim. And most of them have been demolished because they sucked so much. And back when Britain had something of a forward-thinking government after the war, they were like, yeah, people live in shitty housing in this country. We really need to do something. So they cleared a lot of slums and built like tower blocks and council estates. But hilariously, like, some of these back-to-back buildings, I want to say in like Leicester or Leeds, have stayed because they were sort of historically, preserved. But then now they're just being rented as slum student housing again. So hilariously, it's like, oh, we preserved them for their architecture as a reminder. Let's never go back to this. And it's like, no, let's just fucking go back to this. Let's have students living in these fucking things. And they're not the same style. They're the same building.
If moldy ass barracks are good enough for you and me, then they're good enough for the whiny little Brits, little Lord Fauntleroys of England to live in while they go to uni and get their gender degrees or whatever.
Thanks, fucking Brendan O'Neill. Yeah, they it's the whole university thing is wild right now, because students are if they want to attend uni, are being forced to live in residence halls, but then they can't leave, so they're basically in lockdown, being forced to pay exorbitant rates in what basically amount to prison cells with almost no facilities, because it was super important that universities reopen in person so that all the private landlords who run student accommodations can get their money. And now they're like, yeah, fuck you. You're not even going to get home. You're not even going to get to go home for Christmas. You're going to be locked in here the whole fucking year. We don't give a shit. We're taking your money. Like, this is going on, and not a peep from the Labour Party under new management. Because why would that matter? The people who matter are racists who drive candy white Range Rovers and claim to be working class. So I love this country and I love its politics. But we're not here to talk about Britain. We're here to talk about America, and specifically, we're here to talk about our good friend McHooyah getting QAnon, getting Q-pilled, or rather, people who used to support him and thinking he was an American hero getting so Q-pilled, they've decided he's a crisis actor.
Yeah, so I don't think that we can really go into the length, breadth, and depth of QAnon on this podcast. Suffice it to say, it's crazy people.
Listen to QAnon Anonymous. They're really good. And also the summary version, if you for some reason don't know what QAnon is the following: the belief that there is a secret rogue element within the deep state who knows that the deep state, led by the Clintons, is trying to overthrow Donald Trump and perpetuate a child sex trafficking, child organ extraction, black market nightmare enterprise. And so Q, this rogue element of the deep state, has been doing QDrops, telling people about the various things that are going to happen, the various conspiracies that are going to unfold, the various details. None of them are true, but this has basically created a cult of people online who believe, on the American side, that Donald Trump is a warrior god king being stymied by the Clintons still somehow. And in Britain, they don't really care about Donald Trump, but they believe that the children are being sexually trafficked and their organs are being harvested, so that the rich elites of the world can harvest adrenochrome from the glands of children.
If
this sounds insane, it's because it is. Obviously, Britain.
It's so Epoch Times. Do you know the Epoch Times?
I do. Yeah.
Like all the Shen Yu, like the circus, the Shen Yu circus. That was all Epoch Times that came through. It's all this like weird underground like propaganda thing where it's just like you and me, normal people, look at it. We're like, well, obviously this is crazy because you see it exposed for what it is. But like the people on your Facebook feed who are suddenly concerned about child trafficking, QAnon is getting to them.
Yeah.
And that is not to...
Yeah, and that's a thing that's really a thing that a lot of folks have talked about this, like losing friends and family members to this insane conspiracy theory. And it's happening over here. It's just that the Trump angle isn't really there. It's more of on my other show, Trash Future, we spoke to Annie Kelly, who is a member of the QAnon Anonymous podcast, and she covers the British and European developments for them. And one of the points she raised was that a lot of this stuff is more like crunchy granola woo shit here. But anything that purports there to be like a child sex trafficking conspiracy in Britain is going to gain traction because there are child sex trafficking conspiracies all throughout British history. But in this case,
and to be fair, the British government and the American government have absolutely trafficked children. I mean, we lost
100%.
The American government lost 500 children recently.
Yeah.
So it's
wild, and they're probably all going to like fundy parents who are gonna try to scrub the Latino out of them and make them into right wing Christians. Like it's wild shit in America. And in Britain, you have a long history of, because of Britain's insane class system, you have this long history of any place that deals with working class children and children who are at risk. If they come from single parent households on low incomes, if they come from, households where parents have addiction, where parents are in custody, facilities that are built, around supporting these kids have always been places where people with, let's say, more social capital can abuse children if they want to. Some great examples of this, obviously, the one that a lot of people in America know about is Jimmy Savile, who was a radio DJ. And sort of like all British figure, sort of the like all American, but for Britain. He had worked as a coal hauler, as a coal miner as a kid. He had worked as like one of the children who, assisted the war effort. I think they called them Bevan boys in World War II. He was a super like he ran marathons and did like long distance walking and stuff. And he raised charity for children. And he had this show called Jim'll Fix It, where children, made wishes. It was sort of like a Make-A-Wish. And then like this wild radio DJ who dressed like if Rod Stewart had a really bad run of electroshock therapy. And it turned out after he died, of course, everyone knew this. Everyone who was around him knew this, but it was all hushed up. After he died, it was revealed that everyone knew that he was using his position to go to hospitals, to go to care homes, etc., and abuse children, and abuse disabled children, abuse dying children. That he, NHS trusts where he would go spend time and like volunteer, or like be around, like cheer up children. They knew he was abusing children. And it was, of course, silenced. There was another example of this in Rochdale, which is a small city in the north of England, where they had a Liberal Party MP, which the Liberal Party is now the Lib Dems. That's a whole saga of how they got to where they are now. But there was a Liberal MP, and then I believe later a Liberal Lord, so he was elevated to the House of Lords, named Cyril Smith, who was like 500 pounds and just like an unrepentant child abuser who would go to boys' homes in his constituency to both physically and sexually abuse boys. Like he would show up and be like, "Who needs a spanking?" kind of stuff, and everyone knew about it. It's just that it only came out after he died, and of course, after he couldn't face criminal penalties. Similarly, I know, and I don't know the details behind this, but there have been a significant amount of allegations that Lord Mountbatten, who was the best way to describe it was he was the aristocratic British dignitary who both handled the British partition and exit from India in 1947, and then also carried on, as a member. I believe he was married into the royal family, but I'm not 100% sure. He was killed by the IRA in 1979. He went fishing and they blew up his boat, which is hilarious.
As the IRA does.
Yeah, exactly. But he also, I know there were some pretty substantiated rumors that he abused children. There have similarly been rumors about Ted Heath, who was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1970 to 1974, I believe. Those I do not know if they've been substantiated, but there have been. That's another one where people are like, "Ish, yeah, I wouldn't want the truth about Ted Heath to come out." So this is a kind of a long roundabout way of explaining this. That this has been a thing, like upper class people abusing children, and abusing working class children, and the entirety of the British state covering it up has been a thing for so long. And then also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there have been a couple of grooming gang scandals in which groups of men have basically sought access to at-risk girls to then force them into prostitution. And this has happened all over the UK in different environments. And invariably, the environment, it comes down to a total failure of the authorities to care about these children. A total abnegation on the part of the police giving a fuck about it, because why would they care about working class children? You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. But also, in one case, in a city also in the north of England called Rotherham, which you have maybe heard of, this happened, and it was discovered that this took place, and that the main perpetrators in the Rotherham case were men of Asian descent. So basically, like people who were British, but their parents, grandparents might have been immigrants from Pakistan, India, etc. And you can imagine, in a country as racist as the United Kingdom, how fucking hog wild they went about a gang of Muslim men grooming poor white girls for sex work. So Rotherham, when you hear that mentioned, is always like, oh, the Muslims are coming kind of shit. And so that in the context of all of that, a conspiracy that purports itself to be, a secret deep state agent who's gone rogue to tell the truth about the Clintons and Epstein and whatever, you realize like how much traction that could have. It's just, you have to take it out of the American context. There are lots of folks here who like Donald Trump, but he's still pretty unpopular here compared to America. So QAnon can't really work as like a ball washing for Trump kind of thing. It's got to be more fixated on the British side. Oh, and I forgot one other person, Prince Andrew. I should have mentioned Prince Andrew. The Queen's youngest son, Prince Andrew, was an associate of Jeffrey Epstein, and famously appeared in the flight logs, was in the black book, and many of at least one I know for certain, one of the women who was trafficked by Epstein commented that she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was 14. Prince Andrew went on TV to deny this. He claimed he had like a photographic memory, and he knew that the day he supposedly was doing this, he went to the Pizza Express in Woking, which is like a commuter town in the southwest of London. He also claimed that this girl said he was really sweaty, and he's like, well, I can't sweat because I had to have my glands removed after I was in the Falklands. Like, it made no sense.
The most British fucking excuses. I had to have my sweat glands removed from the Falklands when I was in the Falklands. Like,
I mean, like, 100%, if you saw this guy's interview, you could tell that this was somebody who was, raised on a diet of nothing but swans and was used to ordering everyone around and like couldn't fathom why his bullshit excuse wasn't working. Like, it's unbelievable to see. So yeah, that's also like, that's another thing, Prince Andrew there is a lot of incriminating information to suggest that Prince Andrew slept with underage girls, who were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. And obviously, the entirety of the British state is oriented around denying this. And when Jeremy Corbyn raised this in the debates, they said Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic because he pronounced Jeffrey Epstein's name Epstein. I'm not joking.
Yeah. So I think what we're trying to cover our bases here to say is that we understand that child trafficking absolutely happens. And I mean, if you told me that there was something behind the Clintons and Epstein and Podesta and whatever, I'd say, yeah, probably. But like, like the idea that there is some sort of delineation between the Clintons and the Trumps beyond a political party, as if like in 2014 these people weren't perfectly fine and happy with one another because they both serve almighty capital, as we all know. And the idea that now that there are people who believe that, Hillary Clinton is the bad one and Trump is the good one. And I just I don't know, Nate, it's hard to be smart sometimes. And maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am, but goddamn, like the people. Oh,
it's so stupid.
People
yeah.
The people online who I see getting I see, ex-soldiers or people that I served with who are just like, man, this child trafficking thing is wild. And like, my wife has a degree in psychology and social work. she, and she tells me, she's like, all these things have been around, and people have been doing the work for decades, for longer than decades, for hundreds of years. People have been trying to stop these things, and all of a sudden you've got every UGG-wearing, Karen out here with a cup of Starbucks who's been whispered into the ear by, if it's not, and the thing is, as you said, England doesn't have Trump, but what England has is what everybody else has. They have rich white people who are fucking removed from
above the law,
who are removed from science, but not even above the law. Like, talk about rich Californians, or not even rich, just like, upper middle class Californians who suddenly believe that that vaccinations are poison, or that, it always comes down to, somebody says my motherly instincts will tell me better. So the white nationalists have found that it's very easy to go into these spaces for child sex trafficking, where people are very posting about anti-sex trafficking. People are posting anti-vaccination stuff. It's very easy to go in because these people's brains are already kind of broken around something. So it's not hard to be like, also the Mexicans, right? And they're just like, yeah, I guess, why not? So that's how a lot of this is really kind of flowing. It's fucked up and it's frightening, but also, I don't know, like the QAnon thing, I see it being, I see a lot of it out there, but like, again, you and I are incredibly online, so we see this shit constantly. And then like when, the rare occasions that I unhook from the internet, especially during a global pandemic, I just talk to like, my family. A lot of this stuff doesn't come up. My father doesn't know who the fuck Alex Jones is. Why should he? Why should any of us? Why do any of us know who Alex Jones is? Other than the people who are extremely fucking online. So this is, it's, I have fingers crossed and hold out hope that this is just basically, a boomerish kind of thing. But, no,
I mean, I think it's lots and lots of young people too. And I think the big point I would make about it is that, look, when you get down to it, the thing that makes this different than your sort of John Birch society / garden variety cult shit that was common in America, has been common in America since time immemorial, is obviously Facebook and other internet platforms. But Facebook is primarily the most guilty. I think YouTube is also extremely guilty, both on anti-vax stuff and on QAnon stuff. Twitter too, but Facebook is really like primary culprit. And I think one of the things I would point out about it is that you have, the reason why this is gaining traction is because there is, of course, a fragment of truth in it. And I mean, obviously, Brace and Liz at TrueAnon have done a very good job of explaining that, like, a lot of this stuff is because of, look, I'll give you an example. I had a job in New York, and it put me in contact with a lot of rich people because I was doing promotional materials for like, companies that were recruiting. And I remember meeting somebody who was a hedge fund manager. What that means is that at a hedge fund, he was one of the people who was actually in charge of calling the shots of a portfolio segment where, like, whatever his sector was, he, had a team of people analyzing stuff, but he was the person with his team that were making the calls on the money. And so, like, that's a very senior job to be in. Like, he didn't run his own fund, but he basically, that would be the only way for his career to progress further, would be for him to run his own fund, because he was that senior in the job. He's a French guy, and he had been in the French military. He'd been a paratrooper, and so, so had I. And obviously not in the French military, but I'd also been a paratrooper. So we went up talking, and we started talking in French, and he kind of went on this tangent to me once about, I don't believe in Pizzagate, but I do think that there is a significant amount of what I would call, pedophile criminal activity amongst wealthy people around the world, because there's just, if you get to this point where you're that wealthy, like, you will encounter people who will offer you those services, like, and plenty of people are involved, and everyone knows it's going on. And I was like, in my mind, I was thinking like, this guy's a little crazy. This guy's a little nuts. Wow, I didn't know that's French Pizzagate. But then as the stuff comes out and you see, photos of the Trumps and the Clintons and Epstein and all these people that were involved, every senior journalist in Britain, Andrew Neil, Andrew Marr, like Boris Johnson himself, these people had affiliations with Epstein, or in some cases were in his black book. Like they had gone to events, like they had stayed at his fucking. I know Andrew Neil, who's like a very senior shithead conservative. He's a senior person at ITV. He's worked at the BBC. The possibility exists of him leaving his cushy job to start an even more right-wing network soon. Neil has spent a significant amount of time, or had spent a significant amount of time with Epstein. And so when you look at all this stuff, you're like, well, you can see how it's very easy to believe because you've already got so much stuff that is true, like that puts these people in the same spaces. And so, the human nature is to kind of let your imagination wander as to what's going on in these spaces. And, well, I mean, you've got an obvious sex traffic conspiracy. You've got lots and lots of incredibly wealthy and powerful people implicated. People who just show up and you're just like, oh, it's Jeffrey Epstein and Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton on a flight to the U.S. Virgin Islands to go to this weird private island that no one can go to. Like that actually, that's documentary fact. And then Epstein dies in prison or in jail, and they're like, "Oh, whoops!
Let's not never talk about that again." I guess.
Oh, whoops! He committed suicide somehow by breaking his own neck bones. So I don't know how that happened. The cameras all didn't work. Like all this stuff keeps happening, and it's like they're laughing at you. So I get it. I absolutely get it. But it's just. But then when you transform that into like, there's this conspiracy to harvest children's organs, you just have to take it on faith. To me, it's like, no, fight the real enemy. The real enemy is that we have a grotesque concentration of wealth that's allowing these people to be completely above the law. Like, and that you don't have to make up shit about like, satanic panic daycare shit to fucking get that point across.
Yeah. Nobody wants to hear it because the thing is that no matter what, when people are sitting around and they're saying, man, there's a, like pro-life, right? Like, oh, we've got to do something about, all of these abortions. We don't want abortions. We don't want people having abortions. We should make abortions illegal. And then, the problem is that leftists like you and me are the ones kicking in the door and yelling, the problem is capitalism at the top of our lungs. Because it is. It always is. It's always like, man, if things weren't like, shitty for people, maybe they wouldn't have to go to measures that other people might see as extreme. Like the way you stop child sex trafficking is you give people stable homes, you give them Medicare, you give them food, you give them, mental health care. If you like make people not desperate, then they don't resort to desperate things like being trafficked. Yeah,
children aren't going to be in vulnerable situations right. to be exploited if their parents are around or their caregivers are around. Obviously there are situations in which the parents or the caregivers are the abusers. That's really true. But I also think that, from in my lifetime, the times when I have heard stories of people that I have known or friends of friends or folks I went to school with who were abused, what typically happened is that somebody, there was a situation where their parents or caregivers weren't around as much because they had to work because it was a single parent, something along those lines. And someone worked their way into their trust and into their parents' trust to the point where they were like thought of as somebody who was practically a member of the family who, showed interest, and it was mentoring or like being a friend or, a big brother or whatever to these kids. And then, and then it turned out later they were being sexually abused. And so to me, like when you look at these situations, that's not everything. That's not every story. Like there are obviously horrible stories that happen in real life of, stranger assaults and things along those lines. But, from what I can say is what I've read on the topic and what I have experienced from people and stories that I've known in my own life, primarily it's a situation of the kids being able to be exploited because of a situation in which the parents weren't able or the caretakers weren't able to spend as much time with them. And that was typically, in most cases, because of money. So if childcare was provided by the state, if housing was free, if, basic nutrition, food and stuff was free, if you had universal basic income, if you didn't have to work exploitative jobs, I would much rather, lots of the libertarians who are like, I'd do 9/11 to steal my kid away from the NHS so they could get, special medical treatment or whatever the fuck that guy was saying. Those people are always like, oh, how dare you? How on earth would you put children in care of the state? That's horrible. State-run daycares? That's Satanism. That's communism. It's just like, oh, okay. So like Mima's unlicensed daycare, that's fucking better? Like, come on, man. Like, do you know how people actually live in America? Like, do you actually know what it's like to be working class in America? Like, have you even lived in a town with working class people that are not invisible to you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this shit's insane. Like, I go home to Bedford to see my parents, and oh my God, the number of like
probably gray market fucking childcare facilities. You know what I mean? Like
God,
that shit's that's everywhere. And then every time you read the news, and like it's always like people getting arrested for meth or heroin, and like people going to prison for child abuse and shit. Like it's such a common thing, and a lot of them, not all of it, but so much of it is that there's an opportunity for abusers to figure out where to fucking abuse children based on desperate circumstances that are caused by fucking capitalism. And that's not a hard square to circle, you know what I mean? Like, if you just acknowledge...
People have been selling their children for centuries. That's what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that, like... I don't even want to go so far as to say selling their children. Like, obviously that has happened, that does happen, but I think that it's more like... I don't want to put the onus and say that like that the average situation is parents doing that intentionally or like, you know, willfully, because I just don't think that's true. I know there are obviously situations where that has happened and does happen, and that's really fucked up. And I mean, like, you have only to watch one of these like undercover fucking documentaries where like, you know, folks are running a child brothel out of a goddamn motel or some shit to know that this is true. It does happen. You know what I'm saying? But like, I also think that so much of it is the overwhelming majority of it, from what I know of the situation, is people who are friends of the family kind of working their way into the confidence of parents and children and such, which is kind of a derailed topic. But you know what I mean? Like that's there, that happens. And a lot of those, not all of them, could be prevented by, you know, I'm sure there were still, you know, whether you're in like the height of social democracy in Sweden in the 70s, or whether you were in the USSR, I am 100% sure that children were still being abused. You know what I mean? Like it's a horrible fucking thing about human nature. But I do think that a lot of these situations are made worse, and children are made more vulnerable because of the way in which capitalism forces their parents, especially when they have single working parents who are working on like low wage jobs, you know, it puts them in a desperate situation. And so like, to me, that's we've kind of capped off the topic of why QAnon has traction with people. So I now want to talk about Robert O'Neill.
This is all a roundabout way for us to start laughing at the I shot Osama bin Laden guy.
Yes. So apparently the QAnon folks believe that Osama bin Laden was not actually killed.
Well, and this is because so Donald Trump put out or retweeted somebody who made it seem like that Osama bin Laden was captured by the CIA, and then like they set it up for him to be shot in a raid to make Obama look better. So like they found bin Laden, they find him, they put him in a cage. Well, they like build a compound in Abbottabad, or find one, and set it up with all kinds of AK-47s and pornography, I guess, and then shove him in there, and then let these dumbasses come over, lose a helicopter on their way, shoot him in the face, and then 17 books come out about it. So the conspiracy from QAnon is that McHooyah, who is not a liberal, he's not us. He would not come on this show. He would not support anything that Nate and I have to say. McHooyah is banned from two brands of airplane. He can't get onto, I think it's Delta and Southwest or something, because one of them, he was drunk and belligerent and doing the I shot bin Laden in the face thing. And the other one was when he took that picture of himself without a mask saying, "I'm not a pussy," even though he immediately had to put a mask on again to fly, because obviously he wasn't kicked off. But everybody yelled at him because he's a huge dumbass. Of course we all yelled at him. Fucking, there's no need for any of that. So McHooyah is not like, oh, the hero of all of this. This is very much a no, let them fight .gif kind of situation going on here. So now that you know the backstory, now you know where the crazy comes from. Now McHooyah is being accused of killing. Not that he didn't kill it, not even that he was into it. That he is an unwitting and unwilling member of this conspiracy, of this, like, he's been played, Nate. And how many of us troops have not been played by the government? How many of us have not been lied to by the government? Isn't it very, possible that there could have been an Osama bin Laden body double that he shot? McHooyah says, "I know who I shot," but does he? Because he also claims he shot him in the face. And McHooyah seems like the kind of guy who can't tell brown people apart on a good day in full sunlight, not necessarily in the middle of a firefight. So I don't know. Maybe there's something to it, Nate. Maybe he didn't kill him. I don't know, because there's two things here. Either it's a body double or the CIA shoved bin Laden in front of him in front of McHooyah to get shot, specifically so that they could, I don't know, have the stories. Like, I don't know. It seems very disjointed, which is, most conspiracy theories, obviously.
Yeah, it does make me laugh. I'm not going to lie, because, all right, so there's this joke that has been shared on Twitter a bunch by British people, and it's kind of your garden variety twee British humor, but I do think it's funny to an extent, and it's appropriate in this situation, which is I want to say it's immediately after Brexit, after the Brexit referendum in 2016. There was people commenting about all of a sudden the pound had devalued. And like a pound had gone down significantly, like I think from like the $1.40, $1.50 range down to $1.25. Which, I mean, when you consider that in the early to mid 2000s, the pound was like $2 to the pound. That's a pretty big shock. And for folks who, a significant number of British pensioners who are extremely anti-EU, extremely pro-Brexit, and also live in Spain for some reason, and the reason they're allowed to live in Spain is because of their EU citizens. There was this outcry. People were like, oh, this is fucked. This is bad. And somebody basically commented, I never thought leopards would eat my face, says woman who just voted for leopards eating my face party. And this is the same kind of thing, right? McHooyah has been part of this sort of warrior circle kind of conservatism for, since he became a public figure. And there was always this tacit understanding that right-wing troops and veterans, particularly Navy SEALs, and especially Navy SEALs who killed bin Laden, were above reproach. He could do whatever he wanted because these people were always going to fawn all over him. But now that he has been wrapped up in a thing where QAnon is saying the story that made him famous didn't actually happen, he's now being confronted for the first time, probably in his adult life, with more than one or two random people being mean to him online, but rather like a critical mass of people who just now by default have gone from, worship our brave troops to fuck you, you liar, you crisis actor.
They don't like us anymore, Nate. We're not, the troops are being replaced by the cops as the heroes. Like we used to be king shit around here. And now I get told, even by right-wingers that I went to war for nothing, to line the pockets of Dick Cheney. I'm like, bitch, I know, but
we know you are not wrong in that regard, but that doesn't mean that we want to be a part of your weird fucking alternate reality cop state where cops are basically no crisis, no human suffering, no preventably tragic situation matters because somewhere, somehow, a cop is being disrespected.
Well, it's that, you and me as soldiers and as people who have gone overseas, not only did violence and brutalism in the name of the almighty American dollar, but, what we need to do is come home and just become good, honest, hardworking cops who never do anything wrong. The troops are the real problem. The troops are the real cops, and the cops are the real heroes right now. So that's where you and I are done. Nobody loves us anymore. Nobody's kissing the troops anymore because now we've got cops to kiss. So it's sad, but yeah.
Riley had a joke about a bit about a cop who's really really into Elliott Smith. And I was just like, I listened to a lot of Elliott Smith while I was cooking yesterday. Would that be me if I was that cop? Would I be like the hipster Brooklyn? Not even Brooklyn. There was this cop who was assigned to be a plainclothes detective to monitor Occupy Wall Street. And they found the most hipster cop in the NYPD. He lived in St. George on Staten Island, which is the closest thing to a cool neighborhood on Staten Island. And he wore horn rimmed glasses back before they were even a thing, and had a collection of tweed coats. He was a youngish looking guy. In his house, he had vinyl records and an old timey typewriter and shit. They found a hipster cop who was still a cop to go do COINTELPRO shit on Occupy Wall Street. Like, you gotta respect them. They're like, we found the guy who looks the bit. But also, I mean, we have a strong anti-cop stance on this podcast because we also have a strong anti-military stance in the sense that we say, don't do it. And if you do it, then get out and get out as soon as possible. And years ago, someone asked me this question: why is it that why is it that more people can accept the idea of a leftist ex-troop than they can leftist ex-cop? And certainly leftist troop versus leftist cop. And I don't know. I mean, I'd love to get your response, Francis, but I think my take is that it's very, very easy to become a troop, and it's very hard to stop being a troop. And, being a troop, a lot of it revolves around being recruited when you are extremely young and impressionable. When you go and do it, you have next to no rights for a very long time, and you don't really have any way of not doing what you're told to do, within reason. Like, if you try, even if you were told to do something illegal and you try to pull the, like, that's an illegal order, I'm a whistleblower thing, you'll get your ass stomped. Like, it's not as easy as people think it is. And so in that regard, I feel like a person who joins the military at, say, 18, 19, 17 in some cases, and then says, that was really fucked up, what I did was wrong. Like, it's a lot easier, I think, for people to understand that perspective than for someone who, becomes a civilian cop, goes through a police academy, goes through a job where, like, no matter what they do, there are very few cases in which their unions and their buddies won't have their thin blue line of silence. You know what I mean? It's a very, very different environment, and you can quit being a cop overnight.
Yeah.
If you don't like being a cop, you can stop being a cop tomorrow, and they can't do shit. In some cases, you have contracts and such, but like even that's like it's not like they can send you to prison or like it's very, very different than being a troop.
Yeah, quitting being a cop doesn't follow you for the rest of your life.
Not at all. In fact, and in any case, like if you wanted to do work in like cop adjacent shit, it wouldn't really matter what you'd done as long as like you had the cop shit on your record. They're like, oh sweet, you're one of us. Whereas in the military, if you get out and you have a other than honorable discharge, like you're pretty fucked in any kind of thing. But certainly if you wanted to work in some kind of fucking military adjacent thing, not that I'm saying you should. And so when I look at this stuff, I think, yeah, like why is there such a delineation between cops and troops? Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, you can become a cop pretty young, like being a sheriff's deputy and stuff like that. To be a cop in a major city, though, if you're going to work in a department where you have these jobs that pay ridiculous sums of money, and where like Joey Baloney in Philadelphia is earning $300,000 a year working overtime, those kinds of jobs, getting in is not easy. Like I know New York City that you have to pass the civil service exam, and the wait list to go to the police academy to be NYPD is years long. Like it's not easy to become a cop in a major city. It's easier in a rural area, the sheriff's department, that kind of a thing. But once again, you can quit overnight. You can quit on the spot. You can say, fuck this, I'm not a cop anymore, and nobody can do anything about it. And that to me, I think is that also my impression is that like there's a lot of dissent in the ranks. Like, let's be honest. I mean, I was in an infantry unit. I was in an airborne infantry unit, which is, those primarily white unit. But you still had folks who were like, there was dissent. There was dissent about the leadership. There was dissent about the mission. There was dissent about like why we were there in the first place. Like, it's just folks would say like, yeah, we're here because we're in Afghanistan because, they've got minerals and natural gas. And that's, they want to make this place safe for capitalism. Like you'd be surprised that you'd hear that pretty often from soldiers. Whereas amongst cops, like the vibe that I get is just they're basically QAnon before QAnon was a thing. They believe in this like deranged alternate reality that has no basis in, the day-to-day experience of everyday people. They are permanently under threat. Like they're just, once you develop cop brain, there isn't really any coming back from that without a serious amount of deprogramming. And so, I mean, obviously we have an incentive to make this delineation because like we want you to like us and not them. But, I've said this before, something that I've always believed is, you cannot I don't fault any leftist organization that says that it doesn't want troops or ex-troops. I don't have a problem with that at all, because I mean I think people have a right to police their own space and to determine who should and should not be there. And like, you know, ultimately,
I gotta say, just skimming this Daily Beast article, I love that one person is he uncovered secrets about Al Qaeda, Iran, and the United States intelligence in his work as a falconer for Mid-Eastern power players. So this guy's just like, yeah, I talk to all these people because I'm a falconer and they're falconers. And you know what? Falconers, they fucking talk. They love to talk about how Osama bin Laden was kept alive in Iran so that Barack could kill him, I guess. These people are nuts, man. I don't get it. Like, I don't understand, like, how... I don't understand how it worms into your brain. Maybe QAnon Anonymous. I'm sure they do a much better job than you and I ever will on this, because, you know, this is just this little bit of QAnon that touches into our little bit of it, because I don't really notice military people being very QAnon yet. But also, I think a lot of military people are probably much closer to, you know, politically to what's going on, and much more open to, you know, kind of being forced to deal with it. Like, you know, we're not going to get to it today, but the Virginia Military Institute, you know, problems that have been ongoing for years, of problems with racism and sexism. Apparently back in 2017, their like commandant, who is a full bird colonel, was for Halloween, some of the students dressed up as the border wall, and it said no cholos on the outside of it, and the commandant got a smiling picture of himself with it and everything. So, you know, there's a lot of things that, like, the military has its own, like, struggle sessions to get through over the next, like, 15, 20 years to unfuck itself in some way, shape, or form. And, like, the thing is, I'm all about what's going on, because, like, all these things have always happened. It's just, you're just hearing about it now, and we're forcing... You know, things are being forced to do about it. And it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something where we snap a finger and all of a sudden every 25-year-old captain suddenly isn't racist, sexist, and stupid. Like, that's always going to happen, because we're putting 25-year-olds in charge of things, and 25-year-olds are dumb as fuck, as most privates are. And that's fine. It's fine, because sometimes some of them aren't dumb as fuck, and we, you know, don't, and they manage to not kill everybody. So But overall, though, Nate, these weird brainworms that somehow work into the boomer frontal lobe, but also like the people who are just, I don't know, just the people who don't have anything better to do. Like, I have to unfriend people on Facebook for this. People who are like normal, and maybe not normal, but like people who are, you know, perfectly fine, you know, perfectly, you know, people who maybe like maybe they're conservative leaning, but they're nice people. They're not, you know, they were never angry, they were never hateful, they were never resentful. And the last 4 years have just like snapped the collective consciousness and the collective psyche of this country. And, you know, it's not it's you know, that straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. Not like, oh, where did this come from? Like, we know where it comes from. We know where it's been coming from. It's been coming from the days of Nixon. It's been coming from the days of Reagan. It's been coming, you know, it's been coming since the days that black people said, hey, the separate but equal thing doesn't work out for us. We want to be actually equal. And
yeah, I mean,
you know,
like, if you look at what's going on in America, like, America hasn't been sane. America hasn't been stable since 1965, really.
Right.
And the reason for that is that America cannot be a stable country and still maintain its system of government, which is meant to favor slave-owning states. And as a result, like, basically, you're in a situation where non-white people having full equality in the eyes of the law in the United States is incompatible with the way the United States was designed to be as a country.
Yeah.
And that's why it's completely melting down.
The Constitution was not built to deal with what we have going on right now. And it's the thing, it's okay to say we need to update things, and not with amendments, goddamn. Not with a fucking amendment. Just bring it all down and say, all right, let's take some things out and put some new things in that qualify. But the problem is like, who's going to do that? The government, who I don't fucking trust anyway, to undo to like do we really think that we're going to rebuild a new constitution and it's going to be and the people who are in power are going to be like, yes, let's give you people, you dipshits out there more power and not me more power. Like anything that is going to be written isn't, nothing's going to happen, for you and me and the rest of us down here. And I know that the dream is one day we'll have our own 1917 and the rise up against the federal government. But goddamn, man, if we haven't done it now, I really don't know what the catalyst is going to be to do it. Like I really feel like if 2024 Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley run for president and vice president and win, we're basically just fucked. But nobody's actually going to do anything about it. We're just going to be a fucked nation that collapses on itself after about 20 to 25 years. So don't let that happen, everybody. That's the end of this. As always, don't let Tom Cotton have power, please.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Well, honestly, man, you know what we should do? We should roll some of our sweet bonus episode footage so folks can listen to an extremely Boats Troops episode about the 2000 film The Perfect Storm.
Yeah, we let Carrie Shocks, our resident Bostonian and Coast Guardian, to pick a movie, and he picked Perfect Storm, and it is a wild ride to watch a movie that's 20 years old, filled with actors who were kind of famous but not truly famous, to do this goofy ass boats and hose movie. So please enjoy. I would have so much more respect for sword fishermen if I ate swordfish, but I don't care, but that's still pretty badass.
Part of the reason they include all this shit, same with the random sailboat, is because A, it was in the book that this is based on, and then B, they tried to keep it, I think, pretty accurate up until the point that you get around to the last radio call from the Andrea Gale, and then after that, it's all just kind of bullshit. It's just
they had to fill in the blanks because nobody knows what happened.
Yeah, Joe,
because they still haven't found the boat.
Joe, you read the book, right?
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about sword long line fishermen or whatever. I just read everything that Sebastian Junger's ever published. This book is weird as well.
Is it okay? I mean, does it have all the Coast Guard stuff in it?
Yeah, it covers everything that was in the movie a bit more accurately. They fudge a few things in the movie.
Yeah,
but also Younger attempts to fill in the blanks, which was not the most popular thing he could have done because it's not necessarily true.
Right.
In this situation, you might be pissing yourself because you're about to get owned by a whole bunch of waves or whatever,
right. You can just say, and that's the last we ever heard. And
yeah, it just ends mid-sentence. Everybody loses contact with the boat, and he tries to fill in the blanks with what he thinks people would do after interviewing other captains and things like that.
But no one actually has any real idea. Not at all. They finally found, I think, they found a tag from some of the gear that washed ashore, and I forget what the I'm trying to remember what the name of the spot off Newfoundland, because there's one spot that they keep referencing that's off the coast of Newfoundland and whatever. A bunch of shit eventually washed ashore there like that. I think an EPIRB, I think a life raft and some other shit. But by and large, they're they have no idea what actually happened to the boat, where it actually how it sank, where it sank, and there's been a bunch of different theories about it, but no one actually knows. And so he tried to make his best guess, but of course he's making his best guess about a bunch of people who died in a fairly small community. So of course that wasn't the most popular thing he might have ever chosen to do. And even even some of the other shit too. So the other main boat that the book and then the movie talks about is the sailboat that was coming down that was trying to go to Bermuda. In the movie, it's called the what is it, Matori, something like that. It has a different name in real life. And there was some the Satori, that's what it is. It was named the Mistral in the movie. But in the movie, he kind of portrays the captain as being this so like in between scenes of the Andrea Gale and these guys fishing, you get this like kind of boat this sailboat that's also like sailing into the middle of the storm, and it's this old guy boomer captain, and like two women are on board, and he's kind of cavalier and says I never worry about setting a course. I just point the compass in the right direction and just sail that way, which is also not how a sailboat works.
You have to zigzag it back and forth.
Yeah, you have to tack based on the wind. You don't just like sail in one fucking direction. But the movie kind of portrays him as like a drunk. But he obviously contests that because he doesn't want to seem like that kind of shitbag. I mean, I read an interview with him as part of this, and he does seem like he is kind of an asshole. But I mean, who knows if he was actually drunk at the time? And but there was you see like them. It gets worse in the movie. Like the boat does a full like 360 roll like during the storm, which is also not something that would really happen because that would probably like tear the fucking mast off.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah, like that's not like I think they show both that and the Andrea Gale do full like 360 spins in the water in this movie, and like people always ask like the 47 motor lifeboats that like the Coast Guard has, like, oh, aren't those the boats that can roll over? And like, yeah, they can, but even for those boats which are specifically designed to do it, it wicked fucks the boat up. Right. Like it like rips off the fucking like. There's a good chance you rip off like the radar dome off the top and like all the fucking antennas and shit. In order for it to, self-right, it blows the windows on either side with compressed air. So that way the water can like flow through and help the boat rewrite itself. And like, so like everything like short circuits, all your electronics get knocked out. And like, that's a boat that's like designed to do that and then still be able to like function and move. Much less like some like random fucking sailboat or something. So
you can't, you just can't fucking roll.
You can't just like roll a fucking boat and like through the water and expect that like, all right, cool, and we're good. Like I was watching the scene with like the sailboat in particular, and like it even still has a fucking sail up in the middle of the storm.
Right. It's
like there's no fucking way the guy would have his like, his jib up in the middle of like hurricane force winds, like. It's just not a thing that like any fucking sailor would ever do. So I don't know.
So I mean, but we have our sailboat crew rescued by who is it? So who is this that comes out to get them?
So weirdly enough, in the movie, it's the Air National Guard out of New York. So, and there are definitely people who can speak to this better than I can, but the Air National Guard classifies their various different, they're basically, they're the National Guard, but, planes. And so they classify all their different units. Like, you don't have all the different sorts of units in one state necessarily. So like New Hampshire has, I think like a tanker, Air National Guard unit, and other ones have like transport or whatever. But there's a fairly famous one out of New York that does air rescue. And they're known for doing, like, they were, I think, some of the first ones on scene for 9/11. They were on scene for, like, when JFK Jr.'s plane went down, unless you remember of QAnon, in which case that never happened. And there's, like, a few other ones like that. So in the movie, the Air National Guard is the first one that shows up and, like, tries and rescues the crew members on the sailboat that they feature alongside the Andrea Gale. In reality, it was the Coast Guard. So I mean, just throwing that one out there.
But we eventually get it because the Air National Guard does dump them onto a Coast Guard ship, right?
Yeah, which is the Coast Guard cutter. I want to say it's the Tacoma, but I know that's not right. It's Tamara, which actually was I guess like an old Navy boat, so it was like fairly old. So they in the movie, as the storm gets worse, and so to go back a little bit, like the Andrea Gale's crew, catches a bunch of fish off the Flemish Cap, and they pack the whole boat hold full, and then the ice machine gives out. So because you have to like pack the fish with ice in order to get them back to sail, otherwise they'll all just fucking rot. And so they say, all right, well, we're going to go set the market. We're going to go, make our fortune by essentially like landing so much swordfish that, they can set their own price. But in order to do that, they got to, go through the storm. So they start heading in and start getting their ass kicked by the storm. And then it turns to what's going on, kind of south of them already in the storm. And that's the sailboat. And so the Air National Guard picks up the sailboat crew as like the boat is just getting beat to shit by the waves and drops them off on the Coast Guard cutter. And then in the movie, they then get redirected to go try to rescue the Andrea Gale and, try to take, and so you get this, parajumper on the Air National Guard helicopter who, says, oh, it's always like it's always like Gloucesterman or something like that shit. Which is like also like a term that, I've never fucking heard anybody use in my entire life. Like having, worked in Gloucester for 2 years, like around all these fucking people, I've never heard anyone use the term Gloucesterman, but that's a whole separate thing.
Everybody, as always, you can follow me at Army Strength, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way, follow our writings in store, hellofawaytodie.com. And, we're everywhere. I set up an Instagram now, Hell of a Way to Die. I haven't put anything on it, but my wife is just like, you guys should really start branching out outside of Twitter. So I'm going to have to get all new brainworms, apparently. I'm going to have to get the Instagram brainworms.
Yeah, man. I mean, we all do, don't we? But I will never unlock my extremely normcore Instagram. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, you better learn some goddamn German because I will not spell this for you. But my handle is draußen ist feindlich, and you can follow me and see my food pics and my garden pics and basically nothing else because I do not work my Instagram the way I work my Twitter. Let's be perfectly honest.
I'm on Instagram at Army Strang as well, and yeah, it's the same. It's just pictures of my dog, of my kid, and of random shit that I see around. So, I am gonna. My wife set it up. I have to set up a Twitter account for her blog. Blogs are coming back, baby, in a big way. So we're it's 2020, man.
Doing big things for 2021. We're just gonna keep every couple of months. We're gonna force Where There's Your Problem to do an episode with us, so we can keep expanding the show's audience.
We're gonna
among other things,
screaming into pillows, as everybody has been for the last 6 months.
Yeah, and I mean, like by the time this episode comes out tomorrow, so there won't be any election news, but. Whatever at this point.
Next episode's going to be fun because it's going to be my the last episode we record before I retire.
Oh, right on, man. Congrats.
And it'll be post-election, so who knows what we're all going to be screaming about.
All right, once more into the breach. So
good luck, everybody.
Have a wonderful rest of your week.